Submitted for your approval, Close Encounters are making news again. The new sci-fi movie District 9 about a colony of aliens in South Africa was tops at the box office this weekend.
And in Great Britain, the release of more than 4,000 pages of documents related to UFO sightings revealed no fewer than 800 alleged encounters over the last 20 years. And the latest issue of Newsweek features a cover story about NASA spending hundreds of millions of dollars to launch a satellite with a telescope to take a closer look at over 100,000 stars in the Milky Way to see if there may be life on any of them. So all of that got us to wondering, what if the 1960s television series The Twilight Zone had it right all along, when they imagined aliens coming to Earth pretending to help mankind, when really...
I hope so. I fervently hope so.
This is flight number 914 from Earth to our planet.
To serve man, it's a cookbook.
Sorry about that. We just couldn't resist. NBC's Donna Friesen is live in London. And Donna, seriously, the British government is looking at some of these documents. I understand they raised more questions than they answer about UFOs there?
Well, in a way, yes. This is the fourth batch of UFO files to be released by the Ministry of Defense here in Britain. The National Archives began releasing them back in 2001. They're slowly releasing all of what's been gathered over the years because they don't think there's any point in keeping it secret anymore. And these were once top secret files. One of them, in fact, goes all the way back to the days of Winston Churchill. There's a handwritten note from him saying, what does all this stuff about flying saucers amount to? What can it mean? What is the truth? And as a result, the Flying Saucer Working Party was actually set up to try and deliver some answers to Winston Churchill, and it found that most of the sightings could be explained by natural events or regular aircraft. Now, that was back in 1951. What the Ministry of Defense now says is pretty much the same, that what all these files prove is simply that there are many strange things to be seen in the sky. Now, these files detail hundreds of reported sightings, I think you said 800, David, of unidentified flying objects from all over the country. The vast majority did have an explanation, either aircraft lights or satellites in orbits or debris re-entering the atmosphere. And even ufologists, those people who believe in UFOs, admit that the majority of sightings can be explained. But it's interesting that defense officials admit that a tiny percentage, about 1%, defy explanation. Now, that doesn't mean they believe that they're aliens, it's just that they're unidentified. So I guess that's where we stand. The one thing that's really interesting about all of this, though, perhaps not that surprising, is that every time there's one of those alien movies released, like back in 1996 when Independence Day was released, sightings go up dramatically. There were 5 times more sightings in the UK that year than the year previous, and that was also when the X-Files were hugely popular. So Donna, I guess there's some correlation there, but I don't want to denigrate those people who believe, because I understand there are a lot of them, right, David?
When you see government documents and you see that government officials actually sketched out the flying saucers as they were described, and clearly somebody, and you can see the documents right there, somebody had enough of an impression to be able to dictate to somebody else, here's what it looked like.
Oh, yeah, and, the people who deliver these accounts, who report the sightings, are very passionate about it. I mean, these are people who clearly, have no doubt that what they saw was something alien. So, you don't want to denigrate that stuff. But a lot of the stuff had to be explored and investigated, and usually there's a pretty simple explanation for it. But what's interesting is Britain's Ministry of Defense that released all this stuff said that while there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that intelligent life from outer space or alien spacecraft have landed on our planet, they do say they're always willing to keep an open mind. So the truth could still be out there, I guess, David.
NBC's Donna Friesen in London. Donna, thank you so much. And, Monica, it's interesting and worth pointing out that while the British government is releasing their files and their documents, President Obama, who promised to do the same during the campaign, he still has not. So,
are aliens among us? Well, they are at the box office. District 9, the Peter Jackson sci-fi thriller, finishing in first place this debut weekend, $37 million coming in. The alien invasion, a favorite of Hollywood. America's fascination with the extraterrestrial, powerful to say the least. In March, NASA launched the Kepler satellite, its mission to see if indeed there are other planets out there similar to the Earth.
The Delta II rocket,
basically checking to see whether or not we are alone in the universe. Joining us for the discussion, Newsweek correspondent Andrew Romano writes about this in the latest issue of Newsweek. You saw the cover with aliens. Andrew, I understand you've got pretty strong circumstantial evidence, to say the least. What's your lead, and how do you back it up?
Sure, yeah. Basically, Hollywood has always said that aliens are going to come down and visit us, but scientists don't believe that's the case. In the past couple of years, they've made a bunch of breakthroughs that have led us to believe that there are other planets out there that could harbor life. There's water elsewhere in our solar system, for example, and we've seen planets orbiting other suns that lead scientists to believe that there are probably 100 billion to 200 billion other Earth-like planets just in our Milky Way galaxy alone.
1 to 200 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, and how many galaxies are there? Ballpark?
It approaches infinity, so the numbers there are pretty much limitless.
So an infinite number of galaxies, our galaxy alone, with a few 100 billion planets that are similar to the planet Earth. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the chances that there are some other forms of life out there, whether intelligent or not, are very, very high. And that's what the Kepler mission is aimed to do. It's looking to pinpoint the planets that are like Earth, that are close enough to the sun that they orbit to be warm, but not so far away that they're freezing cold. They're the right size, that have the right gravity, that could harbor life similar to what we see here on Earth.
How do they do this? In other words, how do they identify that this number of planets exist, 100 billion planets like the Earth? How do they even reach that conclusion?
Sure. The 100 billion number comes from, it's almost like a mathematical calculation. When you look at how many stars there are out there, when they look at the planets that we've found that are similar to planets in our solar system, they can infer from that the number might be somewhere in the 100 billion range. Now, they don't know for sure, and that's what Kepler is designed to do. It's designed to go out there, stare very intensely at a small part of our galaxy, about 100,000 stars, look at every star, and watch for shadows that pass in front of those stars. And from that information, it can identify the size and the orbit of those planets and potentially, isolate the ones that are like Earth. Then where we go from there is another question.
So just to be clear, and I'll let you go, the number of planets that are similar to the planet Earth is roughly a few 100 billion times infinity. Is that correct?
Well, it could very much well be that. That's the estimate that we have now. And right now we're in the early stages of actually finding those planets and then potentially finding life. So,
let's say, just for round numbers, we'll say there's 100 billion Earths times infinity. Does that work for you?
It works for the scientists who are making these estimates, and it sounds like a good number right now.
I feel like once we add that old infinity multiplier, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Andrew. Congratulations on the cover piece. Look forward to giving it the full run here.